Have you ever looked at a map, one of a national park, and seen those nice, neat boundary lines? They look so simple, so final. But here's the thing. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature is messy. It doesn't care about our borders. So let's dive into this huge conflict and what it means for some of America's most amazing wild places.
Okay, take Yellowstone National Park. We all know it, it's an absolute icon. But those lines on the map, they're kind of an illusion. The water, the wildlife, the very ground itself, it all spills out in every direction. So the real question is, where does the real Yellowstone, the ecosystem, actually stop?
And that question gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. The biggest problem, what some experts call the external threats dilemma, is that a park's health is totally tied to what's happening on the land right next to it. You just can't protect a place by drawing a box around it and calling it a day.
All right, so first up, let's really break down this whole idea of a park boundary. Because you're about to see why, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty much a myth.
You see, we're realizing more and more that our parks and wilderness areas aren't islands. Nope, they are deeply connected to everything around them. They share the same water, the same mountain ranges, and of course, the same migrating animals. What happens just 1 mile outside the park can have a massive impact inside.
And this right here, this shows the conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got these political boundaries. They're often just straight lines on a map, right? The result of some political deal made to keep legal stuff simple. But then you have ecological boundaries. They follow rivers, they go over mountains, they track where the animals roam. They're messy, they overlap, and, well, they reflect reality.
So let's move on and see how this all blows up into a major challenge. Because when you have this mismatch of boundaries, you get this crazy patchwork of different priorities. And a lot of the time, they're all working against each other in the exact same place.
Just take a look at this map. It really shows you how complicated this gets. The Greater Yellowstone ecosystem isn't just one park. It's this incredible mosaic of national parks, national forests, wildlife refuges, plus state lands and private lands, all stitched together. And every single one of those little patches is managed differently.
And this is where things really heat up. The National Park Service, their mission is all about preservation. Conserve the scenery, protect the wildlife, leave it all unimpaired for future generations. But right next door, you've got the U.S. Forest Service, and they operate under a multiple-use philosophy. That means they have to balance things like recreation with timber harvesting, cattle grazing, and even mining. So you've got two completely different missions side by side trying to manage the same ecosystem. And just look at how many people are involved. We're talking 2 national parks, 7 national forests, 3 wildlife refuges, all spread across 3 different states. And that's not even counting all the local governments and private landowners. The potential for conflict is, well, it's enormous.
Okay, to bring this down to earth and make it less abstract, let's zoom in on a real-world case study from the heart of this ecosystem.
Meet the grizzly bear. Now, this is an animal that's at the top of the food chain, and it needs huge, undisturbed areas to survive. A grizzly has no idea it just crossed an invisible line from a national park where it's protected into a national forest where logging might be happening. The grizzly's journey has become this powerful symbol for this whole struggle.
And get this, an incredible 90% of the entire Greater Yellowstone region is owned by the federal government. We're not talking about a small chunk of land here. This is a vast public space, all managed with different groups with different rules. And that, of course, creates some pretty bitter fights. Look at all these competing interests. The tourism and recreation economy, which needs those beautiful views and healthy animals, is often in direct opposition to timber harvesting or oil and gas exploration in the exact same area. It sets up this classic preservation versus development battle, and it can really divide communities.
So what's the real threat here? Well, it's usually not one big single disaster. It's something much quieter, a concept that's been called a death by 1,000 cuts.
And this quote just nails it. It's not one giant project that's the problem. The real danger is the cumulative impact, the combined effect of lots and lots of smaller developments happening on all those different pieces of land right outside the park.
So here's how it happens. It starts small. A timber sale gets approved over here. To get to the trees, a new road is built. Well, that road suddenly opens up the area to oil and gas exploration. And soon after that, a developer sees a great spot for vacation homes. Each step seems separate, but when you put them all together, they can create a wall of development that literally cuts off a vital path for elk or grizzly bears to migrate.
Facing this problem has forced a pretty radical rethinking of how we do conservation. The old way isn't working, so it's time for a new vision, one that's based not on lines on a map, but on the reality of how nature actually works.
And this new vision is built around one word: ecosystem. It's a scientific idea, right? But it gives us a way to understand all the complex connections between the environment, the rocks, the water, the air, and all the living things within it. It's about finally seeing the whole picture.
So the key is this huge shift in thinking. It means we have to move away from managing these little individual plots of land by themselves and start managing the entire interconnected system. We have to look beyond those artificial boundaries to the whole thing.
And really, this is the main takeaway. A new vision where we make decisions based on ecological principles, on how nature actually functions, instead of on the old arbitrary lines we drew on our maps a long time ago.
And you know, this isn't just some nice idea, it's actually being pushed by the law. The Endangered Species Act, for example, is basically forcing all these different agencies to think about what their decisions mean across those boundary lines. To protect a species like the grizzly, they have to work together and look at the entire ecosystem it calls home.
Which leaves us with this final, really challenging question. We have the science, we're starting to build the legal tools, but can we, as a society, really make that shift in our heads? Can we learn to see and manage nature not as a bunch of separate pieces, but as the single, interconnected, living system that it truly is?